Okay. Good morning. This week, House Republicans will move our historic energy package to address the skyrocketing energy prices and Joe Biden's unprecedented war on American energy. Since his first day in office, Joe Biden has enacted a radical far-left anti-energy agenda that ended American energy independence, caused the average price of gas in my district to reach a historic high of over $5 a gallon this past summer, and this winter in the North Country and upstate New York, home heating bills reached their highest prices in over 2 decades. Enough is enough. H.R. 1, the Lower Energy Cost Act, is coming to the floor this week and is a major pillar in House Republicans' commitment to America. It increases domestic energy production, decreases prices, restores American energy dominance, and ends Joe Biden's war on American energy. Shifting gears here on the debt ceiling. Joe Biden has been irresponsibly missing in action on the debt ceiling discussions, putting our already fragile economy in jeopardy. This morning, Speaker McCarthy sent President Biden a letter presenting a reasonable, sensible, and responsible path forward to address our fiscal and economic crises. President Biden himself has negotiated debt ceiling agreements before, and he must join House Republicans on behalf of the American people to the negotiating table again. American families themselves make hard decisions every day to stay within their budgets. They expect the federal government to do so as well. Reining in out-of-control spending, reclaiming unspent COVID dollars, and strengthening work requirements that Joe Biden himself voted for as a U.S. Senator will save hundreds of billions of taxpayer dollars. These examples are just a few of how we can limit spending, save taxpayer money, and grow the economy to get us on a path towards a healthier economy for American families. It's now my pleasure. As you know, every week we highlight many of our rock star freshmen, and I'm so excited to turn it over to Harriet Hageman to discuss how the Lower Energy Cost Act will help drive down energy costs for her constituents and hardworking Americans. We'll go to Harriet.
Hey. Thank you and good morning. America must have accessible and affordable energy, and coal, oil and gas, and uranium are 3 of the most important resources we have to meet our demands. These resources are needed now and will be needed for generations to come, with demand only increasing over time. Anyone who claims otherwise is being dishonest. The key question that we must address then is, who is going to be producing our energy? Our fellow Americans using our very own resources here, or foreign and often hostile countries who do not now and never will have our best interests at heart? For the Republicans, the correct answer is obvious. For the Biden administration and Democrats, however, the answer lies not in using our abundant energy resources and controlling our own destiny, but in offshoring energy and mineral production to third world and dictatorial countries who care nothing about protecting the environment. The Biden administration and our friends across the aisle prefer to rely on coal from China and oil and gas from Russia, Iran, and Venezuela, anywhere but here. Their preferred energy policy is one that empowers and enriches dictators, despots, and tyrants. Their preferred energy policy is one that destroys our access to the use and safe, clean, reliable energy that is found right here in Wyoming, Alaska, Texas, North Dakota, Oklahoma, West Virginia, and Pennsylvania, just to name a few. Their preferred energy policy is one that is designed to increase the cost and decrease the availability of the very building blocks of a civilized society. It's high time that we ignore the lies underpinning the promises of the Green New Deal and face reality. And reality is what the Republicans are offering with H.R. 1, a reality of abundance rather than scarcity, of comfort rather than misery, of healthy and happy families rather than abject poverty, and of prosperity rather than government-imposed wretchedness. And with that, I yield back.
We will now go to our Energy and Commerce member, Jeff Duncan.
Thank you. I chair the Energy, Grid Security, and Climate Subcommittee on Energy and Commerce. And, you know, H.R. 1 is crafted to produce more energy here in America, to deliver that energy to the communities where it's needed, deliver energy to our allies to lessen their dependence on Vladimir Putin's energy oligarch, and improve the standard of living for Americans through American-produced energy resources. It's time we embrace and expand Americans' position as the #1 energy producer in the world through increasing pipeline capacity, exporting more U.S. LNG, streamlining environmental statutes to help build up domestic refining and processing industry for critical minerals. Keep in mind, we're reliant on China, who doesn't do it as environmentally sensitive and safely as we do here in America. It's time to unleash American domestic energy production by reforming the permitting processes for all industries, reversing anti-energy policies of the Biden administration. H.R. 1 contains 16 separate bills from Energy and Commerce Committee that will unleash American energy, actually lower prices for the American consumer, and secure our supply chains. So I look forward to seeing this through the finish line. Thank you.
We will now go to our chair of T&I, Sam Graves.
Thank you. The main reason why I support this piece of legislation is we've had a cold winter in North Missouri, and my constituents are screaming because their heating bills are in some cases 3 times to twice as much as they were last year on a monthly basis, and it's really hurting them. So T&I's jurisdiction in this is the 401 permitting process. And so just to give you a little bit of background about 401 permitting, it was designed and conceived of and passed in the original Clean Water Act to give states the opportunity to be able to deny or approve permits for energy projects. Well, what's happened over time is that's been weaponized. So you have states like New York, New Jersey, Washington, Oregon being another one that have gone outside that criteria within the Clean Water Act. And what they're doing is denying projects based on frivolous things like noise or inconvenience. Has nothing to do with water quality standards. So what we're doing is simply clarifying that if a state denies a project, it has to be based on those water quality standards within the Clean Water Act. We're in no way preventing a state from increasing their idea of what clean water standards should be. We're in no way trying to circumvent that. The states will still have full autonomy to be able to change it, but they have to stay within the Clean Water Act criteria and stay within water quality and not outside of those 4 permitting of all energy projects. So, thank you.
Great. We'll now go to our Chair of Natural Resources, Bruce Westerman.
Good morning. H.R. 1 is delivering on our Republican commitment to America. H.R. 1 will allow us to be energy independent, to lower energy costs, to increase national security, and to cut supply chains from the Communist Chinese Party in China and other despots around the world where we're securing a lot of the energy and minerals that we need. The Natural Resources Committee is focused on 3 areas. The first one is energy production on federal lands and waters, and this isn't just oil and gas. It's all energy production, it's transmission of energy, and it's using the resources that we have here to supply our own needs, to do it cleaner and safer and with less environmental impact than any place else in the world. And we also will be able to export that energy to help our allies around the world. It also deals with mining. And as we look at an electrified economy, it's going to take a lot of minerals and elements. The World Bank says that in the next 25 years, we have to mine more copper than we've mined in the history of the world. China's eating our lunch on mining, especially on things like copper, where we were producing 3 times as much copper as China in 1995. Today, they're producing 10 times more than we produce. They've got 50 copper smelters, and we've got 2. That's going to change, and H.R. 1 is the start of that. It's the plan to put in motion American energy independence. And finally, the third part of the Resources Committee is dealing with NEPA. You'll hear our colleagues across the aisle talk about gutting bedrock environmental laws. That's the furthest thing from the truth. I'm reminded of what Reagan said. Our Democratic colleagues aren't necessarily trying to tell a lie. They just know so much about what isn't so. And they don't know what's in the bill if they think we're gutting bedrock environmental laws. We're keeping the same standards, the same bars that you have to get across. We're just saying you've got to do it in a timely manner. One agency has to be in charge, and there's timelines, and the bureaucratic molasses has to stop. We've got to build things here, we've got to extract energy here, and we've got to extract minerals here. And that's why H.R. 1 is H.R. 1, because it's extremely important to America and the American people. Now I'll recognize our whip, Tom Emmer.
Thank you, Bruce. The American people elected a House Republican majority to address a host of crises caused by the Biden administration. This week, as you've heard from everybody up here, we're tackling Joe Biden's self-made energy crisis, which has resulted in out-of-control costs for consumers, stifled American energy production, and put our national security at risk. H.R. 1 will turn things around by unburdening energy producers and lowering costs for consumers. A vote for this energy package is a vote for common sense, especially given the fact that energy prices in 2023 are expected to be 75% above the average for the past 5 years. Before Joe Biden took office, we saw what sound energy policy could deliver. American energy independence and gas prices were $2.39. We can get there again if Democrats will join House Republicans in lowering costs for consumers by sending H.R. 1 to President Biden's desk. We don't need to beg foreign dictators for oil. What we need is an all-of-the-above energy policy, and that's exactly what H.R. 1 addresses. As we move forward toward a floor vote on H.R. 1, our office has been a part of the conversation between Congress and individuals at the national, state, and local levels who have a vested interest in getting our country back on track. I'm pleased to share that over 100 key stakeholders have come out in support of H.R. 1. Our office has hosted several discussions with them on this topic, and we've heard many stories on the negative impacts of Joe Biden's failed approach to energy. House Republicans are certainly listening to those who've been crushed by outrageous energy costs and unnecessary hurdles to production. House Republicans have been listening. My question is, are vulnerable Democrats listening? We'll see this week.
We'll now, to wrap it up, go to our Majority Leader, Steve Scalise.
Thank you, Elise. Good morning, everybody. And first want to start by applauding Speaker McCarthy for taking a leadership role in engaging President Biden in debt ceiling negotiations. It's been about 2 months since Joe Biden has sat down with the Speaker. The President has said a few times in public that he's going to sit down with the Speaker again to continue those negotiations, but it appears that the President's just trying to run out the clock and trying to bring us to some kind of debt crisis by waiting and waiting and waiting till the midnight hour. That's not how we get this country back on track. And so Speaker McCarthy laid out some very responsible savings that we can achieve to get spending under control in Washington while also addressing the debt ceiling long before it's hit. So I hope the president actually starts doing his job and engaging in this debate again. It's long past time. Now let's talk about an exciting week for families who are struggling. The good news is when we ran to get the majority, we said we were going to go fight for those families who are struggling under the weight of all of President Biden's failed agenda. The inflation-driven failures that President Biden has imposed are hurting the lower and middle income families the hardest. And you see it especially with energy costs. And so this week we're bringing H.R. 1, the Lower Energy Costs Act, and it's focused on lowering energy costs for families that have been out of control and putting in sound, responsible policies that actually allow us to produce energy in America. You've seen the results of President Biden's attack on American energy. It's been severe. It started day one, the day that President Biden took the oath of office. He took very specific steps to attack American energy, and immediately you saw costs going up. Today, costs at the pump for gasoline are 40% higher than the day Joe Biden took office. People, when they pay their household electricity bills, depending on where they live, are paying 20 to 40% higher for their electricity costs. And of course, it's a major driver of inflation when they go to the grocery store or anywhere else. The cost of everything is up because of Joe Biden's anti-American energy strategies. Now, I know that there are foreign countries that hate this bill. You know, if you're an OPEC nation, if you're Russia, if you're China, you want to have the world market covered on critical minerals. We reverse that with the Lower Energy Costs Act by allowing us to make things in America again. And by the way, for those that are supporting, whether it's Saudi Arabia or Venezuela or Iran producing more oil, they're actually hurting the environment because nobody has better standards than the United States of America. I don't know why Chuck Schumer or anybody else that's against this bill would want more energy made in countries that don't have the good standards we have in America. It's about time we start standing up for America. I'm sick and tired of these people who wake up every day beating up America when nobody does it better than us. And by the way, when you're making things in America, it lowers the costs for families who are struggling under the weight of President Biden's failed agenda. So we're going to have a robust debate. This package includes, as you saw, our committees that are represented, the Energy and Commerce Committee, the Natural Resources Committee, the Transportation Committee, have all been at work, not just for these last few months that we've been in the majority, but for years. We have about 20 different bills that are represented in this package that is the Lower Energy Costs Act. And a lot of work has gone in to really good, smart policy at a lower cost for families and help get our economy back on track. With that, we'll be happy to take some questions.
Speaker McCarthy said that he was prepared to lay out $4 trillion worth of spending cuts to the president. Can you give us an idea of what those cuts are and if the GOP conference as a whole has agreed on them?
Yeah, sure. These are results of meetings that we've been having. Speaker McCarthy's been engaged from the beginning with our membership, but also letting the president know that as the president maxed out the nation's credit card, which is why we've hit the debt ceiling, it's because of 2 years of President Biden's spending out of control, trillions and trillions of dollars. We're not just going to give the president another credit card to go max out. No family would do that. And so we said we've got to get some responsible reforms and savings in place. And so the speaker laid out a number of those. If you look at things like work requirements, just going back to what Bill Clinton did working with the Republican Congress to get more people back to work. Look, if you talk to anybody in our country right now, everybody's looking for workers, and yet the federal government is paying millions of people about $30,000 to $40,000 a year to sit at home. It makes absolutely no sense. If you're borrowing money from China to pay somebody who's fully able-bodied to sit at home when they could be working tomorrow, getting a job, paying into Social Security. By the way, you want to talk about a real threat to Social Security? It's President Biden's policies that are paying people not to work. Because if those people were instead working, and we're talking millions of people, estimates show 5 to 10 million people are being paid by President Biden's policies to stay at home. If they were in the workforce where everybody's looking for workers, they'd be paying into Social Security, strengthening that program instead of weakening it. So there's a lot of good benefits to those kind of policies. It would save hundreds of billions just for that alone. Obviously, there are a lot of other proposals that Speaker McCarthy laid out in the letter. At this point, the ball's in President Biden's court. You know, does he want to try to run out the clock and risk more fiscal chaos that we've seen under the Biden administration, or will he finally do his job and sit down with the speaker to work through this?
And you all have agreed on this.
Oh, these are all things that our membership has been talking about for a long time. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the resistance that H.R. 1 is seeing within the Republican conference, and how confident are you that the House will pass it?
You're not seeing resistance. What you're seeing is, with any good package of legislation, members are bringing their ideas forward. You can just see with the amendments that were filed. About 150 amendments were filed. A lot of these we've been working with members on to address different issues that they have in their states. You see issues with wind, especially in the Northeast. I mean, there are whales that are showing up dead on the beach. And whether it's Jeff Van Drew, Chris Smith from New Jersey, who have been wanting to confront this, other members from Florida. We have amendments that address that as well. And so that's what this legislative process is about. We'll see over 30 amendments that come to the floor. But at the end of the day, our members strongly want to get good, smart energy policy in place to lower costs for families. A lot of Democrats talk the talk. We're going to see on Thursday if they actually walk the walk by voting for this bill. Yeah.
Mr. Leader, there was another terrible school shooting yesterday. We had this conversation before. You've obviously been a part of this conversation as someone who's experienced it yourself. But is there anything Congress should be doing, anything the Republican conference should be doing about people that are dying from violent gun attacks?
Yeah, the first thing in any kind of tragedy I do is, as I pray for the victims, pray for their families. I really get angry when I see people trying to politicize it for their own personal agenda, especially when we don't even know the facts. There are facts coming out. It looks like the shooter originally went to another school that had much stronger security, and ultimately went to this school. Let's get the facts, and let's work to see if there's something that we can do to help secure schools. We've talked about things that we can do, and it just seems like on the other side, all they want to do is take guns away from law-abiding citizens. Before they even know the facts, the first thing they talk about is taking guns away from law-abiding citizens. And that's not the answer, by the way. So why don't we, number one, keep those families in our prayers and see if there were things that were missed along the way. We've talked about the need to improve mental health in this country, and that's been a driver of a lot of these shootings as well.
Last question.
In the back.
Last question.
All the way in the back. Hold on, all the way, yeah.
Thank you. House Judiciary was expected to mark up border security bills, a tranche of them this week.
Yep.
Now that's been delayed. It seems like there's some points of contention. How are you all addressing that, especially since this was a big promise, something that you all constantly talk about on the campaign trail? You could argue maybe got you the majority. How are you making sure that border security is going to be addressed, given that
Yeah, like on all the issues that are in the Commitment to America, we start by getting together with our members that have a strong interest in this to put together legislation that can come out of committee and then ultimately pass. You saw that with H.R. 5, by the way, which we passed. The Parents' Bill of Rights is now sent over to the Senate. You saw, unfortunately, just how extreme Democrats were, because every single Democrat, their party's so extreme that they all voted against parents having more of a say in their kids' education. But we're proud that we brought that bill through the committee process, addressed some issues that members had on both sides, and then got that bill to the floor and passed it. We're doing the same thing with border security. This has been a top priority. I was in a meeting yesterday with some of the members of the committees, as well as members that aren't on the committee that are trying to get some issues addressed. It's a large package. It's not just one bill. We're talking about at least 8 bills in the Judiciary Committee, multiple bills in the Homeland Security Committee, as well as the Foreign Affairs Committee dealing with the Remaining Mexico policy, the MPP policy. So all of that will ultimately go to committee. If you want some breaking news, the first week we come back in April, you'll see those committees taking up the legislation and moving them out of committee, going through regular order, and then ultimately coming to the floor. So we're moving that process along, and the committees will actually take up the legislation as soon as we get back. We'll do one more.
Yeah, the Democratic colleagues over on they're talking about the Equal Rights Amendment, and they're bringing up the issue about how it's needed, but that's not covered in the 1972 amendment. But specifically, this would repeal the traditional marriage between a man and a woman, and would it or would it not put schools, religious schools, and religious institutions in jeopardy for lawsuits?
Well, ultimately, I've been a strong supporter of traditional marriage. At the end of the day, you look at what Democrats brought when they were in the majority. They weren't able to pass that through the process. But some of that is ultimately, that's what they keep talking about. They don't want to talk about the problems that families are facing. We've engaged Democrats and said, do you want to join with us in addressing inflation, getting our economy back on track, getting spending under control so we don't keep maxing out the nation's credit card, regarding the debt ceiling, to try to pass appropriations bills so we can have agreements on how to prioritize funding. Priorities don't seem to be a big importance. They think just adding trillions more dollars of spending, doubling the size of the IRS to go after working families. People are fed up with that. Let's actually sit in a room, work through these problems. The Speaker laid that out today by saying, let's sit down with the President and start talking about how to address that problem.
Do you think that this act is needed, this Equal Rights Act?
No, again, it's not something they addressed when they were in the majority. We're focused on helping those families who are struggling and, frankly, fighting for families who have been barraged with increased costs because of President Biden's extreme agenda, letting the far left run so far rampant where families are paying dramatically higher costs for everything, and it's hurting low and middle income families the hardest. Those are the folks we're fighting for. That's why we're bringing bills like the Lower Energy Costs Act. Thank you all.